So picture this. It's the War of Independence, Jerusalem is under siege, and a brilliant Torah scholar named Shlomo Goren says these words. Today, I'm not a rabbi. It's such a powerful statement, and it really gets to the heart of the man we're talking about today, someone who is just as much a warrior as he was a rabbi, and whose ideas would totally reshape the relationship between ancient Jewish law and the modern state of Israel. So let's dive into the life and, more importantly, the ideas of Rabbi Shlomo Goren. He was a revolutionary thinker who basically argued that you can't run a modern, sovereign country using the same legal playbook that kept a people together in exile for 2,000 years. He knew Israel needed something new, something bigger, something national. So who was this guy, Rabbi Goren? I mean, think about it. A battlefield commander who was also one of the great legal minds of his generation. And that's not a metaphor. He was a man who saw absolutely no conflict between poring over ancient texts and fighting on the front lines. And it's that tension, right there, that would define his life's work, and in many ways, the modern Jewish state itself.
You know, when war broke out in 1948, he was actually offered a pass on military service because he was a rabbi. But he said no way. He literally told the draft board, I'll be a rabbi tomorrow after we liberate the land. Today, I'm not a rabbi. He didn't just sit back, he volunteered for combat. He felt it was his absolute duty to be there defending Jerusalem. This wasn't just some abstract idea for him, it was real, forged in the heat of battle. And you know, it was this experience, right there on the front lines, that led him directly to his biggest, most important idea. He realized that this new reality, a sovereign Jewish nation, demanded a completely new way of thinking about Jewish law. He called it Halakha mamlachatit, which basically means state-level Jewish law. The core idea is actually pretty straightforward, but wow, was it revolutionary. For 2,000 years, Jewish law, halakha, was designed for small communities living as minorities, under someone else's rule. But a state, with its own army, its own government, its own massive infrastructure, that creates problems on a scale that you just can't solve with rulings designed for one person at a time. Okay, so this slide really lays it all out, right? The difference is night and day. On one hand, you've got the law of exile, or galut. It was a law of survival, focused on individual problems, and often had to rely on non-Jews for basic functions. But Goren was thinking about a law for a sovereign state, one that had to be totally self-sufficient, providing big answers for huge national systems, like the army or modern medicine. For him, Jewish law had to become a Torah chime, a true law of life, not just a law of survival. Okay, so this is all great in theory, right? But how does it actually play out in the real world? Well, nothing put Goren's big idea to the test like a heartbreaking national tragedy that unfolded in the dark depths of the Mediterranean Sea. So it starts in January 1968. The Israeli submarine, the INS Dakar, just vanishes. 69 crew members on board, gone. After weeks of searching, the military officially declares the crew dead. But for the 16 wives of the married men on board, a whole different kind of nightmare was just beginning. I mean, can you even imagine the agony, the waiting? For the families, there was just this vast empty sea. No wreckage, no witnesses, no answers, just silence. A silence that was just deafening. And it went on for over a year, locking their futures away with the mystery.
And this is where things get really, really complicated, legally speaking. There's this ancient principle in Jewish law that says if a man is lost in waters that have no end, like the open ocean, you can't just assume he's dead. Without two witnesses to his death, his wife becomes what's called an aguna, a chained wife. She can't grieve, she can't remarry, she's trapped in this horrible limbo for the rest of her life. This is where Rabbi Goren, as the chief rabbi of the army, steps in. And he just refuses to accept this. He comes out with this incredibly bold ruling based on 3 revolutionary arguments. First, and this is brilliant, he says a submarine isn't endless waters. It's a contained room. If it sinks, that room fills with water and death is certain. Second, he does something totally new. He brings in modern statistics to prove that the chance of surviving a lost submarine is basically 0. And third, he uses military intelligence to confirm that there was no way the crew was captured. He blended ancient legal ideas with modern logic to solve a very modern human crisis. Okay, so that's a story about a specific, tragic event. But what about a whole national institution? Let's shift gears and look at how Goren applied this same big picture thinking to the Israeli army, the IDF, right from its very beginning. So,
When the army was being formed, you'd think the solution would be simple, right? Just create separate units for religious soldiers. In fact, that's what almost everyone wanted, both religious and secular leaders. It just seemed easier. But Goren? He fought it hard. He saw it as creating a religious ghetto inside the army, and he was not going to let that happen. And his argument to Prime Minister David Ben-Gurion was a total game changer. He basically said that the Jewish character of the state shouldn't be something hidden away for a small religious group. Nope, it had to define the country's national institutions. He insisted that the entire army had to be a place where a religious soldier could serve. And you know what? He won. Because of Rabbi Goren, the entire Israeli army has kosher kitchens. The entire army observes the Sabbath and Jewish holidays, with exceptions only for life or death situations. He didn't just carve out a little corner for religion in the army. He infused the whole institution with a baseline of Jewish identity. And that foundation is still there today. So all of these decisions, they weren't just random. They were all part of a much, much bigger vision. So what was that vision? And why on earth was it so controversial? Because, believe me, his ambitions went way beyond the military. See, for Goren, this was never just about politics. He literally saw the state of Israel as the fulfillment of biblical prophecy. He had this framework, these 6 stages of redemption. And for him, it wasn't just a belief, it was a roadmap. He felt that the first 3 stages had already happened in his lifetime. So you can imagine the incredible sense of urgency he felt to build the religious foundations for what he believed was coming next. But, as you can imagine, this bold, nation-building approach, it caused a ton of controversy. When he eventually became the chief rabbi of Israel, his attempts to apply the same vision to the whole country led to some really bitter fights. His idea of a single Zionist rabbinate was a huge threat to the Haredi, or ultra-Orthodox world, which for centuries had survived by keeping its distance from the state. His modern approach was a direct challenge to their entire way of life. And here's the really interesting part. Despite all these incredible successes, especially in the army, Rabbi Goren himself felt a deep sense of disappointment later in life. He felt that his grandest vision, to completely transform the chief rabbinate into this dynamic institution for the whole country, had failed. He had laid the tracks for a modern Jewish army, but he just couldn't get the whole nation on board. So in the end, Rabbi Shlomo Goren's legacy is this incredible mix of brilliant success and what he saw as his own failure. He was a man who dared to ask a question that is, maybe now more than ever, still echoing today. In an era of constant change and new challenges, how should ancient traditions adapt to the needs of a modern nation? His life doesn't give us one easy answer, but it sure forces us to confront that question.